One of the helpified paths that I looked at was the prospect theory, and what I learned is that it's a behavioral economic theory that states that people make decisions based on the potential value of losses and gains rather than the final outcome. So, in a whole, what generalized it for me was one of the examples they gave, and that was that we are more upset about losing $5 than we are excited if we were to find $5. One of the paths had a YouTube video where it showed a couple arguing, and it just gave an example that this is loss aversion. You're so afraid of losing the argument that you start acting irrational. So, what I was able to summarize from the prospect theory that it works against the expected utility theory. And the expected utility theory states that we're good at assessing probabilities and that we experience both bad things and good things equally. The prospect theory says that we're actually bad at assessing probabilities. We don't know how to weigh them, and we find bad things worse than we actually find good things. We believe that losses loom larger than gains, and we just start acting irrationally to try to avoid losses. And this theory is widely viewed as the best available description of how we evaluate risk in certain settings. However, we don't really see many applications of it outside certain laboratories and just theories. So this is a big argument in terms of the prospect theory. A lot of people say that it just isn't relevant, and other people argue it's not that it's not relevant, it's just so difficult to apply because there's many factors that go into the situation. The next helpified path I looked at was neuroeconomics, and the definition it gave was that it is a interdisciplinary field seeking to explain human decision making, the ability to process multiple alternatives, and to follow a course of action. So what I took away from it is that neuroeconomics is a mixture of economic theory and the study of the human brain and how we are determining and developing and responding to uncertainty and decision making. They started neuroeconomic studying in the early 1990s, so it's a pretty basic new emerging field, and it began when they were studying monkeys and the neurons in their brain, and they were able to find that certain neurons were activated by unanticipated awards, such as drops of apple juice to the monkeys. Scientists became curious, and they started to extend the research onto humans and were to verify the same findings. Neuroeconomics has studied the brain in decision making under risk and also studies of loss aversion. And I thought this was pretty interesting because we just talked about loss aversion with the prospect theory, and we said that we have a strong aversion to potential losses that isn't the equivalent of gains. And neuroeconomics found no evidence for an increase in activation related to negative emotional reactions, but then other studies conducted by different scientists found otherwise. So what I was taking away from the past that I was reading is that there's a lot more research that needs to be done, and this field it's basic, it just started and it's emerging. So they need to conduct more studies to really solidify their findings. One thing I did find interesting and learned was another study found that skin conductance, pupil dilation, and heart rate were all at a higher response to monetary loss than to an equivalent gain. So this might not point exactly at loss aversion. It might point out maybe we are more stressed out when we're making decisions where we might have or experience a loss. So I think this is just something interesting to look at. And so overall, the field is working to contribute to a more scientific understanding of the nature of risk-taking and gambling.